Um, Speaking of Australia, we have Australia's fourth mother, Britain, representing this next movie. Some history. From the UK, we have I Don't Want to Be Born, which, like I said, has various other titles. I first actually saw this movie under the name Sharon's Baby, which is a somewhat perplexing title because there's no character in the movie named Sharon. It was apparently like in dubbed versions they named the main character Sharon for some reason. And also on Amazon Prime, at least in the USA, it's under the title The Devil Within Her. So it's interesting among the titles. And the movie itself is something. Basically, this one woman with a somewhat promiscuous past has a baby who is quite a bit bigger and quite a bit more aggressive than most average babies. And it doesn't take long before she thinks something's wrong with the baby. Maybe there's some type of curse upon the child, maybe he's even possessed by Satan. And throughout the movie, the baby seems to do things that are, well, things a baby probably should be doing. It's a lot of accidental deaths, and it just goes from there. In some ways, it almost feels like The Omen, only, to be clear, The Omen is so much better than this. But I did like, the various accidental deaths, and there were some actually okay kills occasionally. There was like a guy who was being hung, there was a decapitation, and if none of that works for you, there's at least Daniel Pleasance. So, hey, it has something. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I've seen at least the Devil Within Her poster art floating around the internet the past couple of years, and I think that's because there was like a Blu-ray release in the past couple of years for it. But it's a movie that I'd never seen, and thought whenever I get a chance, it's something I'll give it a watch. But yeah, so I thought this movie was bad. It's bad, and I mean, looking at it on IMDb, I think it's got a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, it's worse than Cut. When a movie has a lot of titles, that's usually a sign that the movie sucks on a mass level. Because they go, well, we released it under this title, it didn't do well, let's release it under another title, to give it some new life. Let's see if a new title will bring in more people. Oh, that didn't work. Let's bring in another new title. I don't know how many titles this movie has, but it's at least 3 or 4. And that's just in English-speaking countries. So, yeah, I can kind of see why this movie has so many titles. In addition to that, it really doesn't help that for a movie that has multiple strip club scenes, there's no decent tits in this movie.
I mean, some of the women were sort of attractive-ish.
Look, Carolyn Munro is okay. I'll leave her aside. I've seen her in multiple movies, and depending on the movie, I may tap it. I may. She was in Faceless, now that I remember. And actually, she was one of the things that I commented in, I believe, when we were reviewing your favorite title. What was that movie? That one that's like an old-timey Saw type movie.
You're talking about The Abominable Dr. Phibes?
That's it, yeah. That's the movie I was thinking of. And I did make a comment that I saw his wife in a picture or something in the movie, and I was like, yeah, she looks pretty good. And I believe that was Carolyn Munro. I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure it was. So she's okay, but and to be honest, I guess for the time, Joan Collins looks okay too, but whatever. The movie has a couple of decent names in it. Like you said, Donald Pleasance is in it, so Halloween fans may get something out of that. But there wasn't a whole lot else redeeming for me in it.
I mean, it does have Hilary Mason, so that's always fun.
Okay. I guess the other thing about this movie, even though, yes, it's a British movie, to me, it kind of felt, I don't know, it kind of had a bit of an Italian vibe to it for me. I don't know, did that come across to you?
Well, only because the husband was Italian. I mean, when he was with his sister and they're speaking Italian, it obviously came across. But I mean, honestly, most of the movie to me felt what I would expect, a British movie to feel like.
Mm. There's certain things that happen in the movie that are just kind of silly, or those shots where you're looking at the baby and then they flash between the baby and the more grown-up look. I mean, that was just so silly.
Yeah, speaking of which, I don't think they really explained properly the connection between the dwarf and the baby. We saw the dwarf character sort of give a course on the woman, in a flashback. But aside from that, and the ending scene, it seems like the dwarf and the baby are somehow like interconnected, but we never really get any reason why, which I thought was interesting / really sloppy writing.
There's a moment in the movie where they take the baby. I think it was to get baptized or in the church, and yeah, obviously the baby's freaking out from being in the church, and I'm just sitting there thinking, I mean, wow, I mean, he's in a church. Who, like, he doesn't like being in the church? Then again, who does? I mean, unless you're really religious. So I don't know. There's nothing really in the movie that really felt like it was. I mean, I could laugh at it a little bit just because I thought it was silly and stupid, but it doesn't have enough of those moments either for it to be a movie that's so entertaining for being a bad movie.
That church scene actually is one of the scenes that sort of reminded me of the Omen, because there's a scene in the Omen, and I'm assuming you've seen it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's a scene where they try to take the baby to church and it just starts crying and screaming. But at least in that movie, it comes across as a bit more almost dramatic. And here it just seems like so weak.
Yeah, I've seen The Omen a few times. Yeah, that's a decent movie. Definitely a much better movie than this.
I will say, I did, and this will surprise me, but there is a non-character in this movie, played by Elaine Atkins, who it's not a name I'm familiar with. But I sort of did like that character, and she had a few conversations with Donald Pleasance's character, and I'm not sure why. They sort of talk a little about mysticism versus science, and make little jabs at each other. I thought that was sort of interesting, and despite just being like maybe a 4 or 5 minute scene of just talking, that might be one of the few scenes in this movie that actually stood out to me.
The funny thing is, well, you just reminded me of something that's a weird coincidence. Both my grandparents, or both my grandmothers, have the exact same name, Eileen. Which, I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
One more thing that I think is worth noting, because you said, a lot of the movie can come across as a bit silly at times, when it's going between the baby and the dwarf character, and just a few of the scenes, it's somewhat melodramatic at times even. But because it's made in the 70s, it's pretty much played straight. Like that really corny guy with the mustache, I forget his character's name. But he was such like a stereotypical sleazy guy. And actually, now that you mention, he sort of reminds me of Italian actors I've seen in the past. But the movie's played straight, which makes it all the more funny. And unfortunately, since the story wasn't written particularly well, it doesn't come across as effective. I will say I did like the conclusion, only because it has a somewhat 70s bleak feeling that you would come to expect. But overall, I think the movie is, I think we can both agree the movie's a bit below average.
There was a weak-ass Omen movie with a weak-ass Exorcist conclusion. That's what I thought.
Actually, now that you mention it, this is one of the oldest movies I've seen that has like a quote-unquote killer baby. I know there's a movie from the year before called It's Alive, which I've not seen, and I think that has a somewhat similar idea of a killer baby type thing. But I just hope they can do more with that than what this could do.
Yeah. Well, I've seen It's Alive a long time ago. I don't remember it being a great movie, but I definitely remember it being better than this movie.
I can imagine that's not a difficult thing to beat. So, yeah, a lot of this movie is not great. That's true. I will admit I had an okayish time with it. Now, I have seen this movie once before, a long while back, and I didn't care much for it then. But there's sort of a charm to this movie that I have difficulty putting into words. Just the scenes of the guy walking around downtown London, which are just like filler scenes. But I don't know, it sort of has a charm to it. It's still not a good movie, but it had occasionally interesting kills, and again has some slightly angled down the plasms, and I'm okay with that. I'm giving this a 6.5. I'm going to round that down to a 6 out of 10, which is still for me a below average rating, but I don't think it's as awful as many other people might believe.
That rating is too damn high. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10. Look, it's not completely unwatchable, but it's a bad movie. It's got a lot of corny, tacky scenes. Like I said, it's like a weak-ass Omen movie with a weak-ass Exorcist conclusion. I didn't really find anything in the movie that's drawing me back to it. Lackluster tits for a movie with multiple strip club scenes. That's probably the biggest crime this movie has, and I don't think I'll ever need to watch this again.
I do sort of appreciate how our ratings are somewhat like exact reverse between the first two movies. This should be an interesting show.